And again, my name is Diana Luna. I'm the ED for Nelly. I'm so glad you're all here. Most important because we have Carla Gutierrez, our director. Sí, sí, suena. I was so looking forward to this conversation because um, I think for all of us, Frida means a lot of different things, either from just a beautiful visual and a beautiful face, but also it touches a lot of our identity as a woman, as a creative. Um, so I want to start this conversation, Carla, because I was so fascinated about so many elements about the movie that I could be talking here forever, and then we can continue over drinks later. But I want to start by asking you, but before we get there, hold on. I was just like, because we're already talking, so I'm already in the conversation. So let me just start from the very beginning. Carla, she's such an accomplished editor, winning awards from Julia's Child's movie, winning so many awards, including the Sundance documentary. That to me, this was a very kind of expected result from the work that you had done prior. And understanding also that the work that you're doing as a woman, as a Latina, in such important projects is something that I was telling before we began the movie that we all have to celebrate. Not today, but every day, because then you finish watching a film like this that is so artistic, so respectful, and so honest about an image, an icon, a character that sometimes we don't really know. We just like it, and we like to go to the restaurant and buy the sticker, and like the eyebrows. But there's something, yeah. But we don't really go in depth into what does it mean. So my first question to you, Carla, would be, what made you get into this like curiosity about Frida?
Um, well, I knew her as many young women. I discovered her when I was young, but I discovered her through her art, which was very special back then, a long time ago. Um, she wasn't as commercialized as she is now. So I actually got to see a painting. It was college. I was procrastinating. We had no phones back then. So I was actually getting lost in the library, and I would always open art books, and I found the painting that you saw in the film, which is her standing in between the United States and Mexico. She's wearing this like really pretty pink dress, which she didn't wear that much pink, and and kind of like being observed in a pedestal and like having really strong, um, you know, reactions to the United States. That hey Aaron, hi. And just kind of like not necessarily like loving the United States at that point, and also romanticizing Mexico and really missing Mexico. And I saw that painting and I really saw myself in it, and it was Frida's face, but she just really captured my. I was a new immigrant then, and she just really captured my emotions at that time. And then as I grew, as I matured as a woman, I found that there were a lot of paintings of hers that had the same effect on me, where I felt that like she was just reflecting my own feelings, and she was telling me like it's okay to, open up about those feelings, even though they're so personal, even though they're so intimate. It's okay for us to talk about those things and have a cathartic experience. Like so, I had a cathartic experience looking at her paintings. So that was the reason why I came to this story. But then when her name popped into my head, I was like, well, this story has been told so many times, in fiction, so many books about her. But I went back to the books that I had read when I was young, and I saw so many fragments of her own works and her own writings that it just occurred to me like, okay, her story has not been told through her own voice yet. And I don't know if anybody, it's not obvious because it's not like an interview, it's not like we have video of her talking about her life. So a lot of research will need to be done. but maybe if I don't do it, nobody's gonna do it like the way that I want to hear her story. And I was just like, okay, so then I need to direct this thing, and I need to do it now. So yeah.
But then I was also wondering how you went so in depth with the research that you were able to get all these beautiful materials.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it was. I had an amazing team. The research was incredibly um, thoughtful, very disciplined, because we got every single piece of writing of Frida we collected. And her writings are not, there's a lot of academics that have read all her writings, but they're really not in one place that you can just find them all together. There's some books about that, have some letters to her mom. There's books that have like the love letters to to her lovers. Um, but we had to go to a lot of different places to make sure that we had everything. So that was like the first thing, and then just also the research of archival that we went. There was actually like some archival footage in the film of Mexico at the time that that we just got from personal collections of like a couple of old men that collect like cans of films in markets in Mexico. And so we just really went really deep, because for me, really good sound research then gives you an incredibly kind of like freedom to then experiment, because you feel so grounded, like the story, the voice of the character, her spirit. So then let's play after that, and gives you confidence to be like, okay, we're not gonna talk about only the facts of her life, but how do we get into her heart? So it's grounding that it gives you to really like have good knowledge of the context and the story.
So as you get to know her through all this research, how do you define the storyline within this documentary, and how is that process? Because at the end, I mean, there's so many things that they could have been within the story, right? Within either political, socially, in the art movement. How do you define that story as you were researching, or most important, what was your priority highlighting on Frida?
It was really like, how do we hold her spirit in the film, and how do you get to know her as, how do we create this experience where the audience feels like they're sitting with a friend, and she's telling you all her secrets, maybe at the end of her life. And she really guided us, because the beauty of not having an interview with Frida is that the writings are really like her, her emotions. She's not telling us like, this is what happened this day, this is what happened this other, this year, but she's telling us like, man, like these gringos, they're looking at me, and like they're criticizing me. Like her feelings were so present, and her personality was so present in her letters. And she was writing to people that she loved, so she was very open with them. Her fragility was really like on the page, and there's so many ways she insulted people. Was like, we had so many choices of like swear words that we could use. So she kind of guided us to not, lean into just facts of her life, but really lean into the emotions. But it was really also this theme that we went for, which we had at the very beginning of the process, which was, this is really a story, it could be Frida, but how do we humanize her? And it's really a story of a woman that chooses not to contain her voice. And that was through her art, through the way she spoke to people, through the way that she found refuge in painting. And the fact that she was painting her life, and painting her body, and painting her heartaches and her pain. And so that's kind of what guided us. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are obsessed with Frida here, but for example, like you know that she had polio when she was little.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, like in her childhood, it was really important to really show her spirit of this kind of, you know, loud, rebellious girl that was asking questions and like, you know, was kind of like pushing against any boundaries that she, you know, and very curious and like looking at the world with, you know, with that like passion and curiosity. So those are the decisions that you make, right? Maybe this fact doesn't go into the film, but we really need to capture this personality.
And something that is even disruptive in the way that you select her artwork and how it gets animated. Tell us about that process, because I was really impressed by how you were able to animate the art, but with so much respect, but also telling her story. Like you were really taking out her voice of the visual that we get. How was that process? And also, I mean, the animator, I mean, incredible, amazing.
We work with this. Thank you. I'm gonna tell that this is such the reaction from Los Angeles. We actually found our animators on Instagram.
Wow.
It's amazing. We were interviewing kind of bigger animation companies in Mexico, but then we were just looking at you know art, and we wanted to work with female animators really, and yeah, and we found an artist in that had made an opening for a TV show and had that in her Instagram, and then she put the team together for us. So so the team came together for this film, like different female animators that had worked on other projects for other companies. So that was really special. But the concept for the animation was always, you know, what leads the emotion, right? So every decision that we made in terms of movement or in terms of what to focus on in the paintings was, you know, came from talking a lot about like, well, what did she mean by this painting? What was she trying to say? What was she feeling when she was painting this? How was that painting, you know, like really connected to that moment in her life? How that moment in her life informed that painting later. So it wasn't like, oh, that movement could be really cool with the waves of the water. It was really like, you know, what is the emotion that we're trying to convey in this scene? And we, you know, I talked at the very beginning of the process, because animation is a decision that you have to make really early on because it's really expensive and you have to be really careful with it and you have to be very thoughtful with it. It's like, how do I get you guys to actually dive, like literally dive into Frida's heart? And like Frida's heart, like sangriento, like, you know, like get in there and try to swim in the blood because it gets bloody and right. And then let me take your hand as you're swimming in this pool of her emotions, and let me guide you so that you can pay attention to the things in her paintings that we want you to pay attention to, so that you feel that moment in a more intense way. So that was always the discussion behind the specific decisions of what to move.
But then also a very important aspect is the voice.
Yeah. The narration.
And I mean, the painting, in a way, we treated it as her voice, and then the voice, you know, in a way, we had a lot of freedom because of the limitations we had with Frida, like not having, you know, long interviews with her, even in writing. There's also no recording of Frida, of her voice. Some people years ago thought that they found a recording, but then somebody was just like, no, that's my abuelita. That's not Frida. So it gave us a lot of freedom to actually cast somebody that, you know, didn't necessarily, like, we didn't know exactly how Frida sounded. So when we found Fernanda, we were really looking for a performance more than the quality of a voice, and a performance that could, you know, really convey the the voice of a woman who had gone through a lot of pain in her life, but who had never lost that curiosity and that passion and that desire that she had since she was a little girl, like running around Mexico City, Coyoacán at that time. So, yeah.
What did you discover in this process that was new about Frida's?
So when I said I was obsessed with her, I was really obsessed with her. I was really obsessed, and I read, I bought her diary, I read a lot of books. So I knew most of the details of her life. I don't think there was anything that was surprising. It was hearing her voice when I read everything, really like hearing her tell the stories. Like, for example, the letter when she sent the, what she's telling us in the segment where she has her miscarriage, that's from a couple of letters that she sent to her doctor in San Francisco, who she had a really close friendship with. And she was incredibly open about it. And she, you hear her go from like, what is this gonna do to my marriage? My husband doesn't really want a kid. Is that gonna like affect our relationship? Can my body really carry this pregnancy? Do I really want this baby or not? And when I read that letter, she sounded so lonely and so fragile. And that was what was surprising and special for me, that I hadn't really like heard in the books that I read about her, or you don't get to hear in the Wikipedia page about Frida, or you don't get to hear in like all the when you see her face in all the restaurants that you go to. That fragility and that the texture of her her humor, for example, she had like a very no pelos en la lengua, like a biting tongue, right? So to hear that personality and to see a woman that was complex and was difficult and was not a heroine, but like a woman with a lot of layers. I was able to hear that, and I wanted so much to be able to give you guys that as well through the film.
What do you think made Frida so relevant for today's generation? What is it about her?
A lot of things. I think. Just it. I grew up in Latin America. I'm not Mexican, but like, for example, her giving herself permission to explore pleasure when she was young, and accept desire. Like, I think that a lot of us have that, want to explore those things, but growing up in Latin America, in a very Catholic country, it's very difficult to do so. And you find yourself like very alone as a young woman. And even as an older woman, you feel really alone if you have like experienced something like a miscarriage or, heartache. Like, do I really want to talk about like, being left by a man? Like, do I give permission to like really cry about it and share it in public? And that courage that she had to present herself so vulnerable in her paintings. I think that has always given me courage as somebody that loves her painting so much. And I think that's what makes her relevant. That is, she, gave herself permission to say, no. My internal happenings are as important. And I'm not gonna just like be quiet, look down, and continue, with life as so many women do, and kind of like carry, other people. And just continue with life. Like, she stopped and expressed herself, and it's still hard. Yeah.
Yes, her story is still very current. And I think that you have opened, this curiosity to explore about women, creative women, not only in film like you, but also visual artists, who are those U.S. Latin American women in museums, being recognized, having them recognized with her art, with her work, with her lives. I think Frida was in somehow an advantageous position because she was married to Diego Rivera, and that gave her the visibility. But I think it's important for that reflection into who are those women that are representing our identity, our culture, not only in our countries but abroad. How this inspire you in your career, and what are you looking forward?
Um, it, I mean, I guess it gives me a little bit of courage as well to, I mean, as a Latina, I think getting, in the film industry, in the documentary world, it is, I didn't have that many mentors, like, uh, building a career as an editor. I could only think of like Lourdes Portillos. I didn't know that many like, editors of color, women of color that, had, had had a lot of experience editing. So to get into the room, it's hard, and to stay there and to continue to do work is hard. I mean, I'm terrified. Like, this is my first film, and I want to continue making more. And I'm terrified, like, if I'm gonna be able to, to get to do more, because it's that second film is really hard to, to push through. But then you have to really show up with confidence in sin pelos en la lengua, and like, be kind of like unapologetic, that like trust that that you're talented and that's the reason why you're there, not because of other reasons. So yeah, I mean, I think that's, working on this film, it was inspiring every day, right? But also like, making sure that like, we're not heroines, like perfect heroines. It's okay to be difficult. It's okay to be complex. It's okay to, to make a lot of mistakes. We are just women, right? Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll open the floor for 2 questions. So 2 questions or one. One question. Right in the back. Okay.
Gracias. So when Salma Hayek made her movie, she said at the time, I think it was Raquel Olmedo who had the rights for all Frida Kahlo things, and Salma said that she got the permission. She asked for the permission to have the rights like for 1 or 2 years, and Raquel Olmedo said, no, you have to get it like at least for 5 or 6. And Salma shared that. I am so happy because everything, I got delayed filming, and it took me more than what I thought. How was for you, as not a Mexican, you said you are not Mexican, as a non-Mexican filmmaker, to get all the rights to even make this? I'm mesmerized, and congratulations, but I was just curious.
It was, it was nerve-wracking. It took forever. We were making the film as we were trying to get the rights. But actually, so the Olmedos own a lot of the paintings. But the beautiful thing about Diego's and Frida's work is that Diego Rivera, I mean, they were communists. And
right.
Diego Rivera, who at the time of his death, he owned the rights to Frida's work as well. As her husband, and the concept that he had was to gift his work and Frida's work to the people of Mexico. It went into a trust that is managed by Banco de Mexico. So I mean, I don't know if I would say the people of Mexico really own the art, but that's really the concept, which means anybody can go. I mean, it costs money, obviously, but anybody can go and request the rights. That's why we have so many films about Frida. That's why, different documentaries about Diego can also be made, because it's not like what you're seeing now with film, that like the family, right, owns the exclusive rights to an artist, and only one filmmaker can make one film about that artist.
Right.
So that's the beautiful thing about it, and that's why I had the chance to do something that to me was kind of like a new take on her story, and you know, it is complicated. It costs money. You wait forever for the answer, and you're like biting your nails for it, but it's possible, which is
Totally worth it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you to Diego Rivera for
Yes.
doing that.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Amazon. Please tell everybody to watch it on Amazon
It's
Prime.
on Prime, so please tell your friends to watch it.
Yes, please talk about it, promote it, feel inspired. And now we have a very nice reception where we can continue our conversation. And I think it's that way. Thank you.